The day started like any other for Michael. He had been working as a driver for a rideshare company for the past 2 years, picking up passengers from all walks of life. He had grown used to the variety of people he met every day, from the busy professionals in suits to the tired parents with children in tow. It wasn't a glamorous job, but Michael was grateful for it. It paid the bills, and on good days it gave him a chance to meet interesting people. But today felt different. As he scrolled through his app, he noticed a ride request pop up on his screen. It was a pickup not far from his current location, and the destination was a nearby hospital. Michael accepted the ride, not thinking much of it. But as soon as he arrived at the pickup point, he knew something wasn't quite right. Standing on the sidewalk was a woman, holding the hand of a young boy who looked uncomfortably pale. The woman was pacing, glancing anxiously down the street as though waiting for something or someone. Michael's heart went out to them. He had dealt with stressful situations before, and there was something about the way the woman looked that made him sense that this wasn't just a routine trip to the hospital. When she saw the car pull up, she hurried over to the door. She looked exhausted with worry etched across her face. She smiled briefly when she noticed Michael's friendly expression, but it was clear she was worried about something more than just being on time. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said as she opened the back door for her son. Her voice was steady, but Michael could hear the underlying tension. "We really need to get to the hospital fast. My son is very sick. He needs help, and I'm afraid we're running out of time." Michael's heart clenched as he looked at the boy. The little boy's face was pale, his eyes half closed as he clung to his mother's hand. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, yet he looked fragile, too fragile for his age. The woman helped him into the back seat of the car, gently guiding him as he sank into the seat with a soft groan. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hold you up," the woman said, settling in beside her son. Her voice shook slightly now, as though the weight of her emotions was catching up with her. "It's just, he's been feeling sick for days. I thought he'd get better, but today, it's worse. I couldn't wait any longer." Michael nodded, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "Don't worry about it. We'll get you there as quickly as we can. What's his name?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "His name is David, and I'm Rachel." She paused, then added quickly, "Sorry, I'm not usually this upset, but he's my only child, and I don't know what to do anymore." Michael could hear the desperation in her voice. He knew what it was like to feel powerless in a situation beyond your control. He had been in a similar position not long ago when his own mother had been sick. That feeling of helplessness, it weighed on you, made every minute feel like an eternity. "Don't worry, Rachel," Michael said gently. "We'll get him to the hospital and they'll take care of him." As he drove, Michael kept his eyes on the road, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Rachel and her son. He could see the worry on her face, the way she kept glancing back at David to check if he was okay. Every now and then she would reach out and gently touch his arm, as though trying to reassure herself that he was still with her. The drive was quiet, but Michael didn't mind. Sometimes the silence was more comforting than words. It gave him a chance to think. He wondered what had happened to cause David's sudden illness. Had he been sick for a long time? Or had it come on suddenly? He wished he could do more to help, but all he could do was drive and get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. As they neared the hospital, Rachel spoke again, her voice softer now. "I've been trying to get him to see a doctor for weeks, but it's been so hard. I don't have a lot of money, you know. I thought maybe if I waited, he'd get better on his own. But now I'm scared. I don't know if I've waited too long." Michael's heart ached for her. He could hear the guilt in her voice, and he wished he could tell her that it wasn't her fault. But he didn't know what else to say. All he could do was keep driving and pray that they got there in time. When they finally pulled up to the hospital entrance, Michael didn't hesitate. He quickly got out of the car and rushed around to help Rachel and David. She was holding David close, her hands trembling as she gently guided him out of the car. Michael could see how weak the boy was, and he helped Rachel support him as they hurried inside. Inside the hospital, the staff immediately took over. They whisked David away to be checked in, and Rachel followed close behind, her face pale with fear. Michael stood by the entrance for a moment, watching them disappear down the hallway before he stepped back outside to wait. He had done all he could. It was now up to the doctors. As he stood outside waiting for any news, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. He didn't know why, but the urgency of the situation felt different from anything he had experienced before. It wasn't just about getting someone to the hospital. It was about helping someone in need, about making a difference when it mattered most. He checked his phone, but there were no new ride requests. It was a quiet afternoon and he had the time to wait. He had already been in this job long enough to know that sometimes you needed to take a break. Maybe this was one of those times. Michael decided to stay put for a little while longer, hoping that David would be okay. A few minutes later, Rachel emerged from the hospital, looking exhausted but hopeful. She saw Michael standing near the entrance and walked over to him, her face softening when she saw him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You were a huge help today. I don't know how we would have made it without you." Michael smiled, relieved to see her looking a little less frantic. "I'm glad I could help. How's David?" Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "They're going to keep him overnight for observation. They think he's going to be okay, but it's going to be a long road ahead." "That's good news," Michael said, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "He's in the right place now. They'll take care of him." Rachel smiled faintly. "I hope so. I just wish I could have done more for him earlier." Michael shook his head. "You did everything you could. Now let the doctors do their part." Rachel seemed to appreciate his words. She thanked him once more, and Michael watched as she walked back inside the hospital, disappearing through the automatic doors. As he climbed back into his car, Michael couldn't help but think about the whole experience. It had started as just another ride, another day of picking up passengers and driving them to their destinations. But something about Rachel's situation had struck him deeply. He wasn't sure why, but he felt connected to her struggle. It reminded him of his own challenges in life, how sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't always control the outcome. He drove away from the hospital, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew that for today, he had done something meaningful. And that was enough. The following day, Michael woke up early, feeling the weight of the previous day's events on his mind. The image of Rachel and her son, David, was still fresh in his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been a part of something bigger than just a ride to the hospital. There was something about their situation that lingered with him, a sense of connection that went beyond just helping someone in need. As he prepared for another day of driving, Michael found himself checking his phone more frequently than usual. He had done his job yesterday, and now it was time to focus on the next ride, as he always did. But his thoughts kept drifting back to the mother and child he had helped. He wondered how David was doing, if he was getting better. It wasn't his place to ask, but the worry for their well-being was genuine. Around noon, as Michael was driving through the city, his phone pinged with a new ride request. He glanced at the screen, and to his surprise, it was from the same hospital where he had dropped Rachel and David off. He hesitated for a moment. Was this just coincidence, or was fate playing a role? He accepted the ride, hoping that somehow he would find out how David was doing. When he arrived at the hospital, Michael noticed a man standing outside, looking around anxiously. He had the same worried look that Rachel had worn the day before. Michael rolled down the window and called out to him. "Are you waiting for a ride?" Michael asked. The man nodded, his eyes filled with relief when he saw the car. "Yes, thank you for coming. I'm Rachel's husband. I need to get back to the house. They're keeping David for a few more tests." Michael nodded, trying not to let his surprise show. He didn't know what to expect, but seeing David's father now gave him a sense of closure. He had helped get them to the hospital, but now he would help get them back home. It felt right. As the man got into the car, Michael could sense the same worry that had been present in Rachel the day before. He didn't want to intrude on the man's thoughts, but he couldn't help but ask. "How's David?" Michael asked softly. The man sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "He's stable for now, but they don't know exactly what's causing all these symptoms. The doctors are running tests and they think it's something serious, but we don't have answers yet. I'm just trying to keep it together for Rachel. She's been through so much, and I don't know how much more she can take." Michael nodded, understanding more than he let on. He had seen his own family members go through similar struggles, and it was hard to know how to help, even when you were right there with them. They drove in silence for a while, the weight of the situation hanging between them. Michael didn't mind the quiet. Sometimes it was better to let someone process their thoughts without forcing words. As they neared the family's home, Rachel's husband spoke again. "I just don't know what to do anymore," he said, his voice cracking. "We've been trying so hard to take care of David, but everything feels out of our control. I don't know how to make things better for him." Michael could hear the exhaustion in his voice, and he knew that Rachel and her husband were both carrying a heavy burden. They weren't just worried about their son's health. They were worried about how to keep their family together, how to handle the stress that came with such an uncertain situation. As they reached the house, Michael stopped the car. The man thanked him quietly and got out, but before he closed the door, he turned back to Michael. "You've been a real help, you know," he said. "I don't think Rachel would have been able to handle everything if you hadn't been there yesterday. I'm sure you're just doing your job, but it means a lot to us." Michael felt a warmth spread through him at the man's words. He wasn't used to hearing thanks in such a sincere way. Most of the time, people just said a quick thanks and went on with their lives. But this felt different. It felt like he had really made a difference. "You don't have to thank me," Michael said with a smile. "I'm just glad I could help." Rachel's husband nodded, closing the door behind him. As Michael drove away from their house, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in a while. He had helped a family in need, and that made all the difference. Later that evening, as Michael was finishing up his last ride of the day, he received a text message. It was from an unknown number, and when he opened it, he saw that it was from Rachel. "Hi, Michael, I just wanted to thank you again for everything you did yesterday. David is doing better today, and the doctors are hopeful. We couldn't have made it through without your help. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. You're a true blessing to our family." Reading the message, Michael felt a surge of emotion. It wasn't often that people took the time to show their appreciation in such a thoughtful way. He felt grateful, not just for the message, but for the chance to have made a real difference in someone's life. The next day, Michael woke up feeling a little different. He had been driving for years, but something about the events with Rachel and her son had changed him. He wasn't just a driver anymore. He was someone who could make a difference, even if it was just for one family. That realization stuck with him as he went about his day, picking up passengers and driving them to their destinations. He had always believed in the power of kindness, but now he knew just how powerful it could be. A few days later, as Michael was driving through the city, he saw Rachel again. This time she was standing on the sidewalk waiting for a ride. When she saw Michael's car pull up, she smiled, and he couldn't help but smile back. "I'm so glad to see you," she said as she got into the car. "David's doing much better, and I wanted to thank you again for everything you did. You don't know how much it meant to us." Michael smiled, happy to see that David was improving. "I'm just glad to hear that. I'm sure he's going to be okay." Rachel nodded. "We're hopeful. It's still a long road, but we're taking it one day at a time." As they drove, Michael couldn't help but notice the change in Rachel. She seemed a little lighter, a little more at peace. She wasn't the same woman he had picked up that day at the hospital, frazzled and worried. She was still concerned for her son, of course, but now there was a sense of calm about her. It was as though the worst had passed, and they were starting to find their footing again. When they reached her destination, Rachel thanked Michael again, telling him how much his kindness had meant to her. As she got out of the car, she turned to him one last time. "If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out," she said, before walking away with a smile. Michael watched her go, feeling a sense of satisfaction. He had helped a family in their time of need, and in doing so, he had found a sense of purpose that he hadn't known he was looking for. As he drove away, he thought about how sometimes the smallest act of kindness could make the biggest difference. A few weeks passed, and life seemed to return to normal for Michael. The days blurred together as he continued to drive passengers through the busy city streets. He had seen all types of people, heard countless stories, and experienced his share of ordinary and extraordinary moments. But nothing felt quite as significant as the ride with Rachel and her son, David. He hadn't expected it to stay with him so deeply, but it had. Rachel had kept in touch, sending occasional messages about David's progress. Each update brought good news. He was recovering slowly but surely. The doctors were still unsure about the cause of his illness, but for now, it seemed like the worst was behind them. Michael was relieved to hear that, though he never expected anything in return. His role in their lives had been brief but impactful, and he had no illusions that it would become more than that. However, fate had a way of surprising him. One evening, Michael's phone buzzed while he was waiting for his next ride. It was a message from an unknown number. When he opened it, his eyes widened. It was from Rachel. "Hi, Michael. I know this is a bit out of the blue, but I wanted to ask for your help with something. Would you be willing to meet us tomorrow? We need to talk." Michael was taken aback. It wasn't unusual for passengers to reach out after a ride, but the tone of this message felt different. There was a sense of urgency to it, an implication that something important was at stake. Michael didn't know what it could be, but his curiosity got the best of him. He replied, agreeing to meet up. The next day, Michael found himself at a cafe near the hospital. He arrived a few minutes early, scanning the street as he waited. The cool breeze brushed through the trees and the sounds of the city filled the air, but his thoughts were entirely with Rachel and David. What could they possibly need from him now? It wasn't long before he saw her. Rachel walked toward him, her expression a mix of determination and worry. Michael stood up to greet her, offering a warm smile. "Hi, Michael," she said softly. "Thank you for meeting us. I know it's a bit of a surprise." "No problem," Michael replied. "I'm glad to help, whatever it is." Rachel sat down, taking a deep breath before she spoke. "I don't know how to begin. It's about David." Michael's heart sank. He had hoped to hear only good news, but the tension in her voice told him otherwise. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. Rachel hesitated for a moment, then finally said, "David's condition, it's not improving the way we thought it would. The doctors are stumped. They've done every test they can think of, but nothing is coming back with clear answers. And I'm afraid it might be something more serious than we originally thought." Michael's stomach twisted. "I'm so sorry to hear that. But is there anything more they can do?" Rachel nodded, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "They're recommending a specialist, someone who might be able to find a diagnosis. But the thing is, it's a big financial commitment. We don't have the money for it." Michael listened closely as she spoke. He had heard stories of people struggling with medical bills, but hearing it firsthand was something different. It wasn't just a matter of getting the right treatment. It was about surviving the system itself, where costs and uncertainties piled up on top of each other. Michael could see the weight of it on Rachel's shoulders. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to do. I want to help David, but I don't have the resources to make this happen. I don't even know where to turn." The silence hung between them for a moment before Michael spoke. "What if I could help?" Rachel looked up at him, surprised. "Help? I mean, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to put you in a position where you're stretching yourself too thin." Michael smiled gently, shaking his head. "Rachel, you don't have to worry about that. I know I can't take all the stress away, but if I can do something to make this easier, I want to. You and David have been through a lot, and if I can help him get the care he needs, then that's all that matters." Rachel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Michael replied softly. "It's what I do. It's what I can do. Let me help you figure this out." The two of them sat together for a while, discussing the options available. Michael knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined to do what he could. Sometimes it wasn't just about giving money or making things more comfortable. It was about showing someone that they weren't alone, that there were people who cared enough to fight alongside them. By the end of their conversation, Michael had reached out to a few people he knew who might be able to help. He had connections with local charities, and he knew that there were organizations that assisted with medical bills for families in need. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Rachel thanked him again, a small grateful smile on her face. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You're really making a difference." Michael smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I'm just glad I could be there when you needed me." As they parted ways, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the ride he had given Rachel and David. It was about showing up when it mattered, being a part of someone's story in a way that truly made a difference. The next few weeks brought even more uncertainty, but Michael stayed in touch with Rachel. Together, they navigated the process of securing the specialist and getting David the treatment he needed. It wasn't easy, and there were times when hope seemed distant, but slowly progress was made. The more they fought for David, the more Michael realized that his role in their lives wasn't just that of a driver. It was that of a friend, a support system, someone who had chosen to be there no matter what. One afternoon, Rachel called Michael with good news. The specialist had found something, a rare condition that had been overlooked by other doctors. It wasn't easy to treat, but it was treatable. David's chances of recovery had greatly improved. "We couldn't have done it without you," Rachel said through the phone, her voice filled with relief. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Michael replied, feeling his own eyes tear up. "I'm just happy David is getting better." And as Michael hung up the phone, he realized that this was exactly the kind of moment he had been looking for. Not every day would be like this, but for the days when he could make a difference, he would be ready. The true value of his work wasn't just in the miles driven, it was in the lives he could touch along the way. Months went by, and Michael continued his life as a rideshare driver. He had helped Rachel and David navigate one of the most difficult times in their lives, and although he had never expected to be so involved, the experience had changed him. He'd seen firsthand the impact a small act of kindness could have, and he carried that lesson with him every day. David's health had improved dramatically. After months of treatment and care, the doctors finally had him on the path to recovery. Rachel often sent Michael updates, letting him know that their son was doing better. Each time, Michael felt a sense of relief, knowing that the little boy he had helped that day was growing stronger. But there was still something about the situation that nagged at Michael. Rachel and her family were incredibly grateful, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he could do more. There had to be something more he could do to help them, to show that their kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. One evening, as Michael was finishing up a ride, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from Rachel. "Hi Michael, I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about everything you've done for us. It's been such a relief to have you in our lives, and I wanted to ask if you could help us with one more thing." Michael's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected to hear from Rachel in a while, but he knew that when she reached out it was important. He quickly replied, asking what she needed. "I've been thinking a lot about David's future," she continued in her message. "He's doing so much better, but I'm still struggling to find a way to provide for him long term. The medical bills are still stacking up, and even though things have improved, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep up with everything. I don't want him to grow up with all these worries. I just want him to have a good future." Michael read the message twice, his mind racing. He could hear the desperation in her words, and it struck him harder than he expected. David had come so far, but the fight wasn't over yet. And Rachel was right. Long-term security for their family was still uncertain. The bills weren't going to stop, and the future felt uncertain. He thought about the few times he had met Rachel's husband, who seemed to be doing his best to support the family but was equally overwhelmed by the situation. Michael knew he couldn't solve all of their problems, but he also knew that this was his chance to help in a way he hadn't before. The next morning, Michael set out with a clear goal in mind. He started doing some research, looking for ways to support Rachel and her family, beyond just offering a ride or words of encouragement. He reached out to local organizations that helped with medical bills, and he even looked into job opportunities for Rachel that might help relieve some of the financial pressure. When Michael met Rachel the following week, he was ready. He'd gathered information on several support programs that could help with their ongoing medical costs. He also researched local job training programs, which could give Rachel the tools she needed to start working again, even with the uncertainty of David's health. "Rachel, I've been thinking about what you said," Michael began, sitting across from her at a small cafe, "and I want to help more. I've found a few places that could help with the bills and even some programs that might give you a chance to work again if you're interested. I know it's not the answer to everything, but maybe it could give you a bit more breathing room." Rachel listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. She hadn't expected this, but there was a quiet hope in her eyes that Michael hadn't seen before. "You've already done so much for us, Michael," she said softly. "I don't know how to thank you enough, but this could really help us. I feel like we've been stuck in this cycle, and any opportunity to change that is worth exploring." Michael smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "I'm just trying to make sure you don't have to carry all of this by yourself. You've got a family who loves you, and you shouldn't have to fight these battles alone." Rachel nodded, wiping away a tear that had formed in her eye. "Thank you. You've already done so much for us. I just want David to grow up with the chance to live a happy life. I want to be able to give him that." Over the following weeks, Rachel started applying for some of the programs Michael had suggested. With his support, She was able to find a local job training program that focused on providing career skills to people facing financial hardship. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it gave Rachel a sense of control over her future, a chance to get back on her feet. Michael continued to stay in touch, offering rides when needed and checking in with updates. As the months passed, things started to improve slowly but surely. Rachel found work in a local cafe, a steady income that helped cover some of the bills. David's condition continued to stabilize, and he began to attend school again. His energy and joy returned, and Rachel could finally begin to relax. But as much as things were improving for Rachel and her family, Michael knew the impact they had on him was far from over. He had found something in helping them, a deeper purpose that made his work feel more meaningful. It wasn't just about driving passengers to their destinations anymore. It was about being present, about offering support when it was needed most. One day, as Michael was finishing his shift, he received another message from Rachel. This time there was no request, just gratitude. "Michael, I wanted to take a moment to thank you again. David's doing so well, and we're finally starting to feel like things are looking up. You've given us so much, and I don't think I'll ever be able to express how much that means. If there's anything I can do to help you, I want you to know I'm here." Michael smiled as he read her message. It was simple, but it was everything he had hoped to hear. Rachel and her family had come through a tough time, and they were stronger because of it. As Michael drove through the city that evening, he felt a sense of peace. It was the kind of peace that only comes from knowing that you've made a real difference in someone's life. And as he looked out at the sunset, he thought about all the passengers he'd met and the connections he'd made. He wasn't just a driver anymore. He was part of something bigger. Years passed, and the connection between Michael and Rachel's family continued to grow. It wasn't just about a single act of kindness anymore. What had begun as a simple ride to the hospital had turned into something deeper, something that had woven their lives together in ways neither of them had anticipated. As time went on, Michael found himself more and more involved in their journey, not just as a driver, but as a friend and a support system. David had grown into a healthy young boy. He was no longer the frail child lying in a hospital bed, uncertain of his future. He was vibrant, full of energy, and now attending school with a bright smile on his face every morning. Rachel had found her footing again, not just as a mother, but as a woman who had regained her sense of purpose. She was working steadily at the cafe, a job she had grown to love. Though things were still difficult, they were manageable now, and that meant everything to them. One evening, after a long shift, Michael sat in his car outside his apartment, staring at the city lights. It was a quiet night, and he had just dropped off his last passenger. He reflected on the journey he had been a part of with Rachel's family. What had started as a brief encounter had changed his entire perspective on life. Helping them had become something he looked forward to, a constant reminder that even the smallest actions could lead to the most significant changes. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Rachel. "Michael, I've been meaning to ask you something. Would you be able to meet me? I have something I want to talk to you about." Michael was used to hearing from Rachel every now and then, but this message felt different. There was a certain weight to it, a sense of importance. He quickly replied, asking where and when they could meet. They decided on a local park the next day. The next afternoon, Michael met Rachel at the park. She was sitting on a bench, watching children play in the distance. When she saw him, she stood up, her face lit with a warm smile. "Hi, Michael. Thank you for meeting me," Rachel said as he walked over. "No problem at all. What's going on?" Michael asked, sitting beside her. Rachel took a deep breath, her eyes searching the horizon as if gathering her thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything. About how much you've done for David and me. You've been a constant source of support for us even when you didn't have to be. You've given so much of yourself, and I'm grateful for it." Michael felt a slight warmth in his chest. "I told you I'm just glad I could help when you needed it." Rachel nodded, but her expression grew more serious. "You've done more than just help. You've been a friend, someone who has always been there when we needed it. And I've been thinking about how I can repay you, how I can show you how much your kindness has meant to me." Michael shook his head, feeling slightly uncomfortable. "Rachel, you don't owe me anything. I've always helped because I wanted to, because you and David needed it. That's enough for me." But Rachel's gaze didn't waver. "I've been working hard to get back on my feet. And I think it's time for us to take the next step as a family. We've come so far, and I want to offer you something. A way to show you that we appreciate everything you've done. Michael's curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Rachel smiled softly. I want you to be part of it. You've helped us through so much, and now I want to help you. I know it's not much, but I've been thinking about ways to help you get ahead. To offer something that could give you a fresh start, just like you did for us. Michael felt a lump form in his throat. Rachel, you don't need to. But Rachel interrupted him gently. Please let me finish. I've been working on a little project of my own. It's something that I've always wanted to do. And now that David is healthy, I finally have the time and energy to put it into motion. I want to open a small business, a cafe, like the one where I work, but not just any cafe. A place where people can come together, share stories, and support one another. I know it sounds simple, but I believe it could really make a difference in this community. Michael looked at her, stunned. She had gone from struggling to provide for her family to now thinking about opening a business. It was an impressive leap, and it showed just how far Rachel had come. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Why are you telling me this? Michael asked, his voice soft. Because I want you to be a part of it, Rachel said, her eyes meeting his. I want you to help me run it. Not just as a partner, but as a friend. I want you to see that this new chapter of my life would never have been possible without your support. You've played a huge role in getting me to this point, and I want you to be involved in the next step. I need your help, Michael. Michael sat in silence, his mind racing. This was an unexpected offer, one that came with both excitement and uncertainty. He had never imagined being a part of something so big, especially not something that would come from the kindness he had shown. He had always seen himself as a driver, helping people in small ways, but this was different. I don't know what to say, Michael finally replied, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel smiled. You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know that you've made a difference, and I want to give you the chance to be a part of something that could change both of our lives. Michael felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. Rachel was offering him a chance to be a part of her new life, a life she had worked so hard to build. She was offering him a role in something that could make a lasting impact, not just for her but for the community as well. After a long pause, Michael nodded. I'd be honored to help. If you think this is the right step, then I'm with you. Rachel's eyes lit up with relief and happiness. Thank you, Michael. This means more to me than you'll ever know. They sat in the park for a while longer, talking about the details of the cafe and how they would make it a reality. Michael felt a sense of peace, knowing that he was about to embark on a new chapter with Rachel and her family. It wasn't just about helping someone else anymore. It was about building something together, something that could last. As the sun set on that quiet evening, Michael realized that the kindness he had shown all those months ago had come full circle. What had started as a simple act of driving had turned into a lifelong bond, one that had transformed both of their lives. And as he walked away from the park that evening, he couldn't help but feel that in helping Rachel and David, he had found his own purpose. As the months passed, Michael found himself drawn deeper into the world that Rachel had built. What started as a small act of kindness had blossomed into a community-driven initiative. The cafe, which had once been just a dream, was now a cornerstone of the neighborhood. It wasn't just a place to grab a coffee. It was a safe space where people could gather, share their stories, and find support when they needed it most. Michael had always thought of himself as just a rideshare driver, but now, in many ways, he was a key part of something much bigger. He had been a witness to Rachel's transformation, from a struggling single mother to a thriving business owner who had built something that brought hope to others. Michael had never expected to become so involved, but the work they were doing together had become a passion for him too. He saw the difference it made in people's lives, and that filled him with a sense of purpose. David, now a few years older, had become the cafe's unofficial mascot. He loved spending time there after school, helping with small tasks or just talking to customers. He was full of energy, his once weak body now strong and healthy. Rachel often caught him laughing with the regulars or playing with the younger kids who came by with their parents. She couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the way her life had turned around. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving, and her son was thriving right alongside her. The cafe had become more than just a place for coffee. It had become a community center. Rachel and Michael had made it a priority to help those who were struggling in the same way they once had. They offered job training, financial advice, and even emotional support for those who needed it. People who had nowhere else to turn found a place in the cafe, a place where they could talk, share, and begin to rebuild their lives. One evening, after the cafe had closed for the night, Rachel and Michael sat at one of the tables reviewing the week's events. The cafe had been bustling as usual, with customers coming and going, and they had just finished sorting out the finances for the month. Rachel sat back, rubbing her eyes, exhausted but content. "You know," she said, looking at Michael, "I still can't believe how far we've come." Michael leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's incredible. I never imagined we'd be here, not when I first picked you and David up that day." "It feels like a lifetime ago," Rachel smiled. "It does feel like that, doesn't it? But we've made it. We've built something together." Michael nodded, "And it's only going to keep growing. There's so much more we can do, more people we can help." Rachel's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That's what I've been thinking too. I think we've reached a point where we can do even more for the community. We've helped so many people find jobs, get back on their feet. But what if we could create a bigger network, a bigger platform for people who need help, a way to bring even more businesses into this mission of giving back?" Michael looked at her, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Rachel leaned forward, her hands clasped together on the table. "We've built a community here, Michael, but what if we could take it further? What if we could partner with other businesses, create a coalition of people who are committed to helping others, not just offering jobs, but providing mentorship, resources, and a support system for anyone who's fallen on hard times?" Michael's eyes widened as he began to understand where Rachel was going with this. "You mean like a network of businesses that work together to help those in need?" "Exactly," Rachel said, her voice full of excitement. "A network that isn't just about profit, but about giving back. We've been able to do so much here. But what if we could bring that impact to other neighborhoods, other cities? What if we could make this a movement?" Michael sat quietly for a moment, processing her words. It was an ambitious idea, but he could see how it could work. Rachel had already built something beautiful, something that had made a real difference in their community. Expanding that to other businesses, to other communities, could help so many more people. "I think that's a great idea," Michael said finally. "But how do we start?" Rachel smiled. "We start by reaching out to other businesses, small businesses, nonprofits, even larger companies. We show them the value of being part of something bigger. We bring them in and get them involved, not just financially, but through hands-on support. It's about building relationships, creating a network of people who want to give back." Michael's heart raced with excitement. It was a big undertaking, but he believed in it. He had seen firsthand the impact that small acts of kindness could have, and now they were talking about creating a whole system of support for people who needed it most. "I'm all in," Michael said. "Let's make it happen." Over the next few weeks, Rachel and Michael began reaching out to businesses in the area, telling them about the vision they had for a network of support. At first, it was slow going. Many businesses were skeptical. They were used to focusing on profits, and the idea of prioritizing community support seemed risky. But Rachel and Michael didn't give up. They kept meeting with business owners, explaining their vision and showing them the impact their cafe had already made. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Some businesses were intrigued, others were enthusiastic. They saw the value in building a strong, supportive community, and the more they heard about the work Rachel and Michael had done, the more they wanted to be a part of it. After months of hard work, they had built a network of businesses that were committed to helping others, from local shops to nonprofit organizations. They had created a coalition of like-minded individuals and companies that were working together to support people who needed it most. It wasn't just about giving away free services. It was about giving people a chance to rebuild their lives. Rachel couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride as she looked at what they had accomplished. They had created something real, something that could help people in ways she had never imagined. As the months passed, the network continued to grow. Rachel and Michael worked tirelessly to keep things running smoothly, offering support to the businesses involved and helping connect people who were struggling with the resources they needed. They saw firsthand the difference it made in people's lives, and that kept them motivated. David, now a bit older, was still an integral part of the cafe. He had grown into a thoughtful and compassionate young boy, and his energy was contagious. He had learned so much from his mother and Michael about the power of community and kindness. He was always the first to offer a helping hand or a kind word to someone in need. One afternoon, as Michael was finishing up a shift at the cafe, he sat down at one of the tables with a cup of coffee, reflecting on everything they had achieved. The cafe was busy, but there was a sense of calm that had come over him. He felt at peace knowing that he had helped create something that was making a real difference in the world. Rachel joined him at the table, a big smile on her face. "You look like you're deep in thought," Michael chuckled. "I was just thinking about everything we've built. It's amazing, Rachel. We've come so far and there's so much more to do. I never imagined I'd be here, but I'm so glad I am." Rachel reached across the table and placed a hand on his. "We've done it together, Michael. You've been here from the beginning. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Michael smiled. "We've built something special, haven't we?" Rachel nodded. "We have. And I think it's only just the beginning."